Hello, I'm Andrew, and I guess I've been asked today to talk about some tips when it comes to studying and going to class, and essentially just like how to improve your learning abilities. And I'd say that one of the most important things that you really have to do when you go to class is it's really important to be aware of which topics you might need help with. Which sounds pretty obvious, but it's actually something which a lot of students, when they're aware of it, they don't take action on that knowledge. So for example, when you're a student in class, it's very important when you come across a topic that you're not clear about, that you ask the teacher to elaborate, especially when it comes to tutoring companies. The whole reason you're coming to get tutored is because you want to improve the parts that you're not too clear on in a time where hopefully you're in a smaller group environment and therefore you have more time with a professional. And so that's the perfect opportunity for you to really raise the points that you're not really clear on and talk to the teacher about how to improve in these areas. A lot of people are very scared to do this because they think that, they might get judged by their classmates, they might get judged by the teacher, and that's just completely not the case in a tutoring environment. The whole reason you're coming here is because you want to improve on the areas that you're lacking in. And so I think it's really important that you put up your hand and you go, hey, do you mind explaining this a little bit more? And that's actually something that you should bring into your everyday class as well, right? Your teacher often should explain, give you an opportunity at the end of class or at the end of the topic to raise your hand and say, like, does anyone have any questions? And that's a really good opportunity for you to raise your hand and go, hey, I'm not too clear on this. Do you think we could talk about it like privately after class or something? And that's a really key skill that you need. And a lot of people who don't possess that skill often lag behind in some of their knowledge. And in maths, that's a death sentence, right? In English, even if you miss a particular part of a text or you're not really clear on a theme, a lot of the time you have the option to write your essay on, other themes, other texts. And so you can sort of murmur your way past it. Whereas with maths, if you lack some sort of fundamental knowledge, that's going to be catastrophic for the rest of your maths career. And so I think that it's really important to basically just know how to raise your hand and ask questions. When it comes to taking exams, there's basically two things which a lot of people overlook when it comes to preparing for it. The first thing is time management, and the second thing is having a good mental state going to the exam. So in terms of time management, it comes pretty self-explanatory. When you go into an exam, you should be aware of what the exam format is like, and also be roughly aware about how much time you want to spend on each part of the exam. So for example, for the English literature exam in BCE, that's a 2-essay exam in 2 hours. So you should have a general awareness of like how much time you should spend on each essay, and perhaps, how much time you want to spend planning on each essay, how much time you want to spend writing on each essay, and how much time you want to spend editing on each essay. And now, of course, when you go into the actual exam, your actual timings are probably going to differ from your plan, and that's fine as well. And that's when the second part of the exam taking techniques comes in, which is a good mental state. The worst thing to do in an exam is to panic and to stress. When you panic and you stress, you're going to start repeating the same things over and over in your head, which is just going to waste more time. It's actually worth it to take 5 to 10 seconds to really slow down, chill out, reset yourself, and then get back into the exam, because that's actually going to save you a lot of sort of stress and frustration in the exam, which actually leads to sort of a decreased performance. The other thing as well to be aware of mental state is that each exam should be considered to be independent from each other exam. So if you have 2 exams in a day, and on the first exam you do really, really poorly, you shouldn't let that really impact your next exam. Once you finish an exam, forget about it. I personally recommend not comparing answers with other people. Once you finish the exam, it's over, right? There's no point comparing answers. At some point, you're probably going to come across an answer which you got that's different to what a friend got. And whether that's because you got the question wrong or because they got the question wrong, neither of you knows for certain, right? Neither of you has the actual answer. So all that's going to do is just basically increase the amount of stress. You're going to be thinking about, did I get this question wrong? Did I get this question wrong? Did I get this question wrong? The exam's over. Even if you got it wrong, there's nothing you can do. At that point, just cut it off. It's a part of your life that's long past now. The only thing that matters is the next exam. And that's probably one of the most important things from an exam to exam basis, is you need to make sure that you reset your mental state, forget about anything that's happened in the past, and only focus on what's coming up next. And that's actually something you should also apply to the questions that you do in each individual exam. Once you finish a question, right, you should move on to the next question. If you have one question which you don't know, and you don't know how to start it, you don't know how to finish it, that's fine, right? Don't let that stress you out. Just skip that question, move on to the next one, and do as much of the exam as you can without panicking or stressing. So those are probably the two things that are really important: time management and having a healthy exam mental state. When it comes to choosing your classes for VC, there's essentially three considerations that you should take in mind. Your number one consideration should be how much you enjoy the subject, right? And at the end of the day, the general advice that should be given is if you don't enjoy the subject, don't do the subject just because it has good scaling. If you're doing the subject, for example, specialist maths, but you absolutely hate it and you hate the entire time you're doing it, that's not just going to lead to bad specialist maths scores. That's also going to lead to negative impact on your other subjects too. And a lot of the time, the negative impact that this sort of mental capacity of doing a subject you don't love has on you actually leads to decreased returns compared to whatever you might earn from the scalings. The second consideration you should have is obviously the prerequisites for what university degree you want to do. So for example, commerce and science degrees require some level of mathematical method scores, or a lot of the science degrees require either chem or bio. And so in that case, if you want to go into one of those subjects, then obviously that's something you need to consider when you're choosing your subjects for VC. And the last consideration I have is scale, right? And it should only be something that you use to basically split the difference for two subjects that you equally love. So for example, you have an equal love for something between, say, business management versus specialist maths, and you think that you're basically equally skilled in the two areas, then maybe that's where scaling can come in and sort of tip the balance. And you'd be like, you know what, I think that specialist maths is better scaling than business management, and I love the two subjects equally. I might choose specialist maths instead. But you should never use scaling as a first consideration, and it should really be something that you leave till the end. Love for a subject and enthusiasm for the subject is probably the number one motivating factor that will actually get you good marks in a subject, because it's something that motivates you to study it harder, to look more deeply into it, and to do more exercises on it. And it will lead to a much healthier mental state when it comes to the sort of dog days at the end of your VC 3-4 studies.